The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Grant-Pichet and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet is with
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet. Good morning, Dr. Grant-Pichet.
Good morning, Shannon. How are you?
I'm good. It's April. Today is April 1st. We have no April Fool's Day for you.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad. You don't know I could handle an April Fool's joke.
I said to somebody this morning, I both hate and love this April Fool thing. As you know, we have a dear friend who loves to do things on April Fools and always used to glue things to our chairs and take panic buttons and put them on our keyboards. And I'm so glad she's not here today. Because she would blow up dolphins and put them in your office. It was a lot. But it was also funny. So anyway, we're here. It is the month of April. If you guys haven't looked already, we have an amazing schedule for you for the month of April. We're just getting it started today with Dr. Grant-Pichet. Our starting topic for today is toileting and potty training with Dr. Grant-Pichet, and we're going to be talking with her about that. Let's go through the fact that we are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A lot of our shows in April are pre-taped, but our Ask Dr. Doreen's are live. So I just want to remind everybody, you can be writing in right now on whatever platform you're watching, and we're happy to converse with you about whatever you want to talk about, including our starting topic, but anything else as well. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing you some of the different ways that you can connect on the screen if you're watching us. Don't forget that you can be watching all of the Ask Dr. Doreen's on the Ask Dr. Doreen YouTube channel. We really encourage you to go there, to like, to share, review. It's all helpful. And don't forget that Ask Dr. Doreen is its own podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, it's a free download, but when you get it, it will come with advertisement. If you are someone who is very busy and wants to get straight to the content and doesn't want any advertising, we encourage you can go to glow.fm/autismlive. When you do that, for a small fee, $5 a month, you're subscribing to everything we do at the Autism Network. It will show up in your inbox with no advertisements for that low cost of $5. And it will be everything that we do here, including Ask Dr. Doreen. So we hope that you guys will check that out and check out our schedule of all the amazing programs that we're doing. In fact, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be welcoming a dear friend of ours, Ilana Gershlovitz. We don't usually have a guest on Ask Dr. Doreen, but later in the month, we're going to be having Ilana join us from South Africa to talk about some very important things going on there. So we also have much to celebrate in the month of April, not the least of which is that you're going to be having a birthday. And so we're not getting to that yet because you still have like a week and a half, but just throwing it out there. So I also like to remind everybody, a little disclaimer at the start of the show, that Dr. Grant-Pichet is a true expert in the field of autism. My goodness, the work that she has done in this field is mind-boggling, right? And I don't know anyone who is more concerned about the rights of individuals on the spectrum and about helping the people who surround them, who love them, to get to the answers that they need to be better allies, better supporters, to help those individuals to the best life that they can possibly have for them. Very individualized. But there is no expert in any field that can give individual specific advice in this format. We ask that you write in your questions, be as specific as possible, and know that Dr. Grant-Pichet probably is going to have some more questions for you, but also refer you to the expert who has eyes on the situation, but give you lots of information to take to that meeting to help that individual or to help yourself. Okay. Did I leave anything out? Yeah. Did you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're going to launch right in, but feel free to write your questions in as they come up. There's a big overriding question about potty training, but then there's a lot more that are very specific. Would you like to start with the big overreaching?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So somebody wants to know, what is the Fixx and Azrin potty training method, and how is it different than what you do at CARD?
It isn't different. We do a version of the Fixx and Azrin. And I think everyone in ABA does, honestly. It's been around for a really long time, and it's based on behavioral principles. And essentially, it is, I'll go through, I guess, Shannon, a real quick, sort of concise version of the steps. And for our viewers, we do have, I think, a couple of shows that are just entirely dedicated to the procedures, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely.
So,
in fact, there's one specific one that you did during the podcastathon that they can look up, that you go, with a PowerPoint, you go through the whole Fixx and Azrin for them.
Yeah, and that's really, really detailed, and I recommend that if anyone is interested in the procedures, you go through that, because there's a lot of little things that come together in this procedure. So I'll just do a very quick review here. It starts with basically preparing yourself and preparing the environment and making sure your child is prepared. So preparing yourself means you need time. And so we used to do this over a weekend. I would give at least 2 days, the whole day. You don't want to be doing anything else because this does take a lot of your time and attention. The second thing is, obviously, you want to make sure your child is in a good place. You don't want to be doing this if they're not feeling well. It's recommended to try the procedure when your child at least shows a little bit of discomfort about being wet or dirty. So in other words, they have a little bit of awareness that they have voided. And that is a very helpful thing to have when you start this procedure. And then you need to spend a little bit of time preparing the environment. And that is a lot in the actual potty room or bathroom that you decide to use. You want to make sure that it's a fantastically fun place, because you would be spending a lot of time in there with your child. Have all sorts of goodies in there. I know a lot of people actually move a small TV in there. Make it a really fun environment. It does help with some children to have pictures of the steps that they are supposed to take over during the course of the next couple of days. So if you have photos of the child doing those steps, for example, pulling down their pants, sitting on the toilet, flushing, all sorts, every step. If you have pictures, you can put them up so that it's a prompt for the child so they know the steps. So it goes all the way through washing hands, all of that. So those are things that you kind of have to do. And then, of course, you begin with the procedure itself. And the procedure itself starts with, and I think a lot of different providers modify this portion, which is the amount of time on the potty and the amount of time off the potty. But you generally want to start with on the potty. And the procedure, the original procedure, started with about 15 minutes on the potty, or at least, or until the child actually voids. By the way, we're focusing on urination and not bowel movement at this point, because that would be too difficult to do. So you're just looking at potty training of urination. So basically, you will have the child sit. You will also have been, by the way, in terms of preparation, giving the child a lot of liquids, obviously, trying so that the child actually does have to go. So either when the child goes or maximum at 15 minutes, you allow the child off the toilet and you give them a break. And some parents tell me that it is not helpful if they actually put clothing on when the child is on a break, that the child immediately will void in their underwear, for example, or pull-ups. So some parents prefer to not actually put anything on because it's more kind of like not comfortable for the child, and then they seek out a place, and then you kind of know, oh, it's time for them to go. The idea with this whole thing is on the toilet, off the toilet, shorter breaks off the toilet, then back on, and every time the child voids, they get off the toilet again for a period of time. And over the course of the day, your plan is to increase those periods of time that are off the toilet. And of course, the biggest part of this is when the child does actually go, you celebrate, man. I mean, we're talking, you throw a party in that bathroom and you turn on the TV and you have a good time in there, and really make sure that your child gets access to the toys and things that they want only when they actually void. Usually, if you do this procedure pretty much all day long for a couple of days, children pick it up. They get the procedure. They understand the routine. And again, if it doesn't happen, I think it's really important to not get upset about it. Just let it go. Continue your normal life, and then you can revisit it a couple of weeks later. I know that it's very frustrating for parents, and it's a huge step for our kids, and it does work. It's a helpful procedure.
Thank you for that. I'm also saying hi to Rosie. Rosie, we're waving back at you. I think one of the reasons why this came up, Dr. Grant-Pichet, is that I'm not sure whether it's a part of the original Fixx and Azrin, because as you said, there are lots of places that kind of just, do slightly different. But there's as we get into April, there are all these things that that seem to be online that say the steps, and they're saying that it's from Fixx and Azrin, but it's not directly from Fixx and Azrin. I think the part that everybody's talking about is that on these memes, it's saying that if your child has an accident in this time, that you should do this procedure where 5 times you make them pull up their wet pants and go back to where they did it. And people are like, about that.
That's overcorrection. And that is the procedure that no longer is really used. So I think that's part of the modification. And as I said, I think the Fixx and Azrin procedure came about, as long as I've been around. So I know that it was written back in the 70s, I think. So there were a lot of procedures that later on folks were feeling like they're not really effective and they're more punitive, and that sort of thing would have been taken out. Now, since then, I believe Fixx and Azrin themselves wrote it multiple times, modified it themselves, and then, as I said, providers have also modified it further. But so, we don't really refer to it as the Fixx and Azrin procedure anymore because it's been modified a lot.
Yeah.
But it is, it does not involve any kind of overcorrection.
Okay. So for people seeing that online, that's not something you do at CARD. That's not something you recommend. It really isn't something anybody should be recommending. Okay. Love that. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And again, you guys can be writing in your questions right now. We are live. It is April 1st, 2025. Okay, the next question that we have is, my son is 4, and whenever he needs to poop, he goes under our dining room table to poop. Mm-hmm. What do I do about that? Can I hope that someday he doesn't have to wear diapers?
Yeah. So it's actually really wonderful that he does that, because he's giving you a very clear sign that he needs to go. So when he goes under the table, you need to very quickly get him to the toilet. And there's 2 things you can do. One is sometimes kids are afraid of the actual toilet for whatever reason, and they do better with a small potty, like a very, the plastic ones that are for really young kids. I don't know the age of this child, but sometimes children do better when you give them one of those small ones that is not like. I think children wonder, what happened to my poop? Where did it go? Or something like. And a lot of kids are like afraid of falling into the toilet. So it's helpful if you have a different, like a little one, like a plastic one, where the child actually sees their poop after they void. But that's for some kids. Regardless, you want to make sure that you grab your child, take them over to the bathroom, and this is why it's so important that the bathroom is a very, very pleasant, rewarding environment. Because you obviously don't want to scare the child. You don't want to put them in a situation where they feel like they've done something wrong. You just want to start guiding them that if you want a private space, the bathroom is where you go. And so you kind of are replacing the under the table with the bathroom. And it works. It's just, you're not always going to be successful, but I think that it's important the biggest success with this is making sure that your child has access to rewards only when they void in the toilet and they're in the bathroom, not the rest of the time. So that's kind of the important part of this, is that you pick the child's biggest reinforcers, biggest rewards. They might be food items, they might be toys, they might be activities like bubbles, whatever they are, and they only occur in the toilet, in the bathroom. Now, you can also do this in a long phase. So in other words, you could really just reward the child for going to the bathroom, and then gradually you increase your demands, which is not enough for you to go to the bathroom, but I need you to go to the bathroom and actually pull down your pants. I need you to go to the bathroom, pull down your pants, and sit on the sofa. Now, you also can do it in a reverse kind of chaining procedure where the child doesn't have pants on and you just have them go to the bathroom and sit down. There's lots of variations on this, which is why I think it's important to watch the detailed version because it helps you figure out what works for your child. But the idea is all you're trying to do is you're trying to give your child a signal, sort of a symbol that when they have this urge, it's time to go to the bathroom. And by the way, the bathroom, you'll get lots of goodies if you go there.
That's amazing. For those of you who are looking for that whole episode that was about that, it was hour 43, I believe, of the podcast-a-thon, which is just crazy. But if you just Google Autism Live potty training, it comes up. I know I did it yesterday. And it's amazing. You go through the whole thing. Okay. A really detailed. You also brought back a memory. I don't know why they don't have this anymore, but when we got our first little potty chair, it was a throne. And when you sat on it, it would go dun da da da. And he loved that. I don't know why they don't make those anymore, because that was very.
There's a couple of really good books, Sushan. I think I named them on the other show, and a lot of kids love when you read those books for them too. Going potty and all of that.
Yes, I love those. There's I love the one, The Gas We Pass. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah.
And The Holes in Our Nose. There's so many great books like that. Okay, so this one is hard. My heart hurts reading this. My son was potty trained with no accidents. Then he started kindergarten, and now he has accidents all the time. They requested that I send a change of clothes, which I have done. Twice now he has come home with dried poop, smeared all over his back and bottom because he soiled himself after the change of wet clothes and the teacher made him sit in it. After the first time, I totally melted down and had a meeting with the principal who assured me it would not happen again. It happened again today, and when I complained, they said from now on, if he has a second accident in the day, they will call me and I will have to bring him home. What can I do to stop this? Why is he all of a sudden having a problem with what I thought was already done?
Yeah. So that's very frustrating, and I feel very bad for this parent. It's like, we really don't need this kind of stuff in our lives, You need to call an IEP, emergency IEP, like make a really big deal of this, because it sounds like they're doing what a lot of schools do, which is just putting all of it on you as the parent. It's a school. They're not a babysitting service. It's a school, and they need to know how to take care of our kids. And they have certain responsibilities when we place our kids in their care. So you need to call an emergency IEP and be upset. And in that IEP, you will need to tell them that none of these things are okay, and that they need to, there's actually a lot of written law about these types of things. And they should be helping by assigning this they're not going to like, but they're going to have to assign an aide to him because now they've been the cause of him regressing in a skill that he had already mastered before he started going to school. So they are responsible for that. And so they need to assign an aide that will take him to the bathroom on a schedule. And you kind of like backtracking a little bit and getting him familiar with the environment and the schedule. And then as he succeeds, then they can remove the aid. But I don't see that happening for at least a month. So they would have to give you an aid that is there for him for that period of time. It's a fight. It's not easy, but they need to take responsibility for it. Why does he do that? Don't be worried about it. It's just a new environment. It's an anxiety-provoking situation for him. He probably doesn't know how to go, where to go. The toilet at the school is quite different than the one at home. A lot of things that you can do on the weekend if they give you access or when there are no other kids there, you can absolutely practice with him like make him more familiar with their bathroom. There's a lot of stuff in school that people don't pay attention to that can be anxiety provoking for our kids. You know, for example, the sound of bells or buzzers going off in between classes. Those types of things can cause a lot of anxiety for our kids. And so it's really important. Don't worry, you've done nothing wrong. They have, and they need to take responsibility for it. And they need to have it in his IEP that they will actually step in and give him support before he has accidents. They should not be calling you when he has an accident so that you can come get him. That's useless. Their job is to try to teach him to not have accidents in school and to be very comfortable. But you need to make a really big deal about the fact that he was perfectly fine before he came to school.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry. It's just such an annoying thing, you know?
And I just want to say, for me, there's only two possibilities here because it's so horrible. You always say, you know, you can teach a lot of skills to people, but it's really hard to teach someone how to be kind if that's not who they are.
Yeah.
And this teacher, there's only two possibilities for me. Either she is completely without compassion, because how you could let a child sit in their own poop for a period of time for it to dry on them, is just unconscionable. Yeah. Or they're trapped between a rock and a hard place and they're in a situation where they need more help and they've asked for it and they're not getting it. And this is how they're trying to get it, in which case either of them, you should be squawking, just like Dr. Grant-Pichet said, because there's so many different things here legally, and you need to make the school afraid of you at this point. But the fact that the teacher instead of because look, I'm a former teacher. If this were happening in my classroom, and let's say I have 42 kids and I'm having trouble managing all of them, I would still say to the parent, look, we're having repeated problems. Can you send like 4 pairs of clothes? And let's get this, figured out. And I would be asking the parent, how is this working before? What signs do I need to be looking for? Yada, yada, yada. So the fact that now the principal has said, you're going to have to come get him. Oh, go after these people. Go after these people.
Yeah. It's their job. They need to be much more engaged in actually, I even have a problem with the fact that all they want to do is change his clothes. They need to be dealing with this before it happens.
Yes.
And it's really upsetting. I don't know where you are, but these are the situations where if you were in California, for instance, I believe the regional centers would provide you with some legal guidance on this. So they do have parent advocates that can give you some help. What is that, Shannon? What's the organization that we used to refer people to where they could get advocates or attorneys? Remember Bonnie used to tell us?
Yeah, so COPAA.org, that stands for the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, is a great resource to be able to find parents that are advocates for their own child. They're either advocates or attorneys. It's a great place. So that's COPAA.org. But I'll tell you, we have a new resource now called the Parent Hub. And it's parenthub.org. And these are federally funded places that can help you with IEPs too. And they have their own lists of of advocates and attorneys that maybe aren't in COPA but are in your area. So really, really helpful. ParentHub.org, and find the one that's closest to you. They have to legally be in every state. Okay. But yeah, definitely get some support with that, because what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And I understand why that parent melted down. My goodness. Bless your heart. We got a bunch of people writing in. We're saying hi to Writing with Mike. Hi also to Autism Journey with Elijah. Rosie has written back in and said, my 17-year-old son cannot clean himself very well. He has Down syndrome, mild ASD, and ADHD. He's in a rush for everything. He does a great job. If I'm guiding him what to do, what can I help him with to master this skill? And thank you for your help. And we also want to say that somebody else has written in saying that their child is also is having trouble with the cleaning themselves. And Autism Journey with Elijah says, hello, Dr. Doreen. Glad to see you live this morning. We missed your Tuesday insights. I love that.
Oh, thank you so much. Good to hear from her too.
Yes.
So there's a few videos out there that are really, really cool, actually. So that helps the child model the steps of wiping.
Yeah.
And I think you need to, the thing I like about these videos is that they have sort of a model next to the child, like a large doll or something, and the child practices it first on the model and then practices it on their own. So you're not, it's just a matter of practicing and making sure that your child actually gets the steps correct and does a really good job. I would really recommend giving your child some wet wipes. They really do help with the wiping portion. And then the next part of this is to fade yourself out of the modeling. That's kind of why I like these videos, because it doesn't involve you. It involves the child kind of following a video, but they could be also following you doing washing or wiping the model. You do need to set up a model on a little potty or chair to show them, because they should be wiping from behind, that sort of thing. And, but the idea is that you then need to increase the steps that get a reward. This is shaving. And in shaving, you will first reward every little part of it, like the smallest accomplishments of the wiping, for example, pulling out the wipe. But as you progress, the idea is the reinforcer is only given when the entire thing is complete. So they pull out the wipe, they wipe, and they do a good job. So when they have a clean wipe, then they actually get the reinforcer. That's how you remove yourself from the modeling, is that you increase the contingencies required for the reinforcer. But it does take quite a bit of modeling, and then as you're modeling, you gradually reduce your own involvement so that the child is successful in doing more. Now that is the main way to do it. Another way to do it is backward chaining, where you basically will do most of the wiping and the child does the very last step, which is the clean wipe. So now they have the clean wipe, and remember, the key to it is for the child to actually see, oh, it's clean. Then they get the reinforcer. And then in that procedure, the next time you're modeling it, you will help them with all of the steps except the last two. So then maybe the last two wipes, and the child wipes and then wipes again and they get a clean. Then the next time you do it until the very last three wipes. So you gradually backward fade yourself out. Regardless whether you do it regular chaining or shaving or backward chaining, you want to get yourself out of the mix, and you want your child to understand that it's important to accomplish the end of it is that clean wipe. And once they get that, then if they should do it and be fine with it. It's not the actual motor aspect of it. It's just that I think a lot of kids, as this parent said, Shannon, they're rushing and they don't understand what is expected of them.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, as parents, I don't know why sometimes the first thing that should occur to us is I need to reinforce that behavior. But I think sometimes we're afraid of, well, I want it to be reinforcing in and of itself. But if you don't experience that, if you don't know what it feels like on a daily basis to have a clean bottom, it's not going to feel reinforcing to you. Right?
Yeah, and you have to remember that children, and sometimes even adult children who are affected severely by the spectrum, they don't really connect the dots. So it might be very uncomfortable if they're soiled, but they're not going to necessarily put it together and realize, oh, I am uncomfortable because there is soiled potty on my body, or, because I didn't wipe well. They don't connect that, right? So that's why you want to make sure that they don't have to have that level of comprehension at this point. They just need to realize that the end step that gets the reinforcer is the clean wipe.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier for them.
They've written, Autism Journey with Elijah has written in and said that they're actually on their way to a developmental pediatrician to discuss other issues as well. But one of the issues, he has attendant care, but it seems that there's a little bit of a relapse issue, that he's now defecating and wetting his underwear. They say it is not attention and waiting for the last minute, because if I see him needing to go, I remind him. I think he has turned it into a game now for attention. What do we do? And as I said, they're on their way to the developmental pediatrician to talk about it right now.
Yeah. So yeah, sometimes I don't know if it's a game or just control. Like potentially the attention that he's getting is after the fact when he does have an accident, So you just need to not just remind him, but maybe it's time to, again, attach it to a powerful reinforcer. So, and hey, it's time to go. And by the way, remember, if you go, you get X. So that's all. And it's kind of like, you don't want to get into a battle about it, but you do want to remind the child that the reinforcer is more powerful than this game we're engaging in right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then it's hard because whatever, like you were saying before with the bathroom, whatever it is that you're giving them for the reward, they can only get it for the bathroom.
That's really hard.
Yeah, yeah. It is hard, but it works.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I think.
And it's not like, so some kids, for instance, are at an age where they really enjoy video games on their iPad or something, which is totally fine. You don't have to prevent them from having the iPad the entire time, but you can prevent them from playing their favorite game. And they can do that only based on their potty behavior.
Yeah. And that doesn't last for a long time, you guys. That's just to steer that behavior. And then they start going, oh, well, if I go in the bathroom, I get to have it. And then it just becomes easy for them once they get it. It doesn't end up being a long time, but you got to really hold your own and not give in. Because all that teaches them is that you're weak and they're strong, and we don't want that. Somebody wants to know, is it possible to potty train a nonverbal child?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely possible. You don't need verbal. A lot of the procedures that we use just use visual prompts as well. And definitely, it really just depends. It's not a comprehension matter. It's more it's a conditioning issue. So with a lot of the things that we teach, the reason that we break them down into small steps and reward every step is just that. You're basically doing operant conditioning, which is any behavior that I reward is going to increase. And any behavior that I don't reward is going to go away and extinguish. So that's the concept, and you don't need to have any kind of language or advanced comprehension of language even, because it's just a series of steps of behavior that are rewarded.
It's funny because, I'm relatively new to ABA. We've been doing this for, 17, 18 years, but that's relatively new. I don't know if I told you this, we got a new dog.
I heard. Congratulations.
Yes, but he's a senior dog that we adopted, so he has some behaviors that he has, and I'm now having to go back to my ABA mind to have to think about how are we going to shape this behavior because, he's just on his own little planet. But
absolutely, yeah.
But this little guy, you'll have to see him. He's the cutest thing in the world. But I've now seen that his most favorite thing in the world is walkies. Like walkies. Yeah. And so if he can get a walkie for something, because he doesn't know his name. He's an 8-year-old dog and he doesn't know his name. So I'm learning that I have to use the thing that he loves to teach him his name. If I say Mr. Bingley is Mr. Bingley every time that, and he's nonverbal, you guys. But but he's going to be able to get it. I just have to show patience, which I'm short on. But
it's amazing, Shannon. Like as you know, I have many dogs and I love dogs and I always have had many, and they really learn a lot of recessive language over time. They exhibit a lot of behaviors that are like humans in terms of attention and wanting to get your attention and things they do to gain their rewards, and how they being able to put words together with rewards, just like you said. So, and not to use them as an example, but this conditioning, operant conditioning or classical conditioning for that matter, is just what behavior is controlled by, the human behavior. So these procedures are all absolutely teachable without without language.
There we go. Somebody wants to know, what is the right age to start potty training?
That's a great question. And I would say it really depends on your child. It's harder if the longer just like you said right now, Shannon, like this puppy has been around for 8 years and you develop behaviors and routines, and then it's really hard to break those. So we like to go as young as possible. That said, you want to make sure your child is ready. And the readiness has more to do with just awareness, being aware of when they are urinating or having a bowel movement. That is probably one of the most important things. When you are able to get your child to attend, those are things that will really make the procedure go a lot faster. So ideally, I think if it's a child who's definitely showing signs of readiness, then, as young as 2, maybe 3. And if the child doesn't really get there yet, 4, you want to try to do it as early as possible.
There we go. Somebody wrote in and said, we did the potty boot camp and it didn't work. Does that mean that my child will never be potty trained?
Not at all. And you should probably revisit the procedures with someone who is trained, like a behavior analyst, and just make sure that you're doing everything right. And then give yourself a month and do it again.
There we go. I appreciate writing with Mike. They wrote in and said that Eli finally has an appointment today. It's finally happening to be evaluated for ABA. Think about how long we've known that family, and that's how long they've been waiting for that appointment that's happening today. I don't know if you want to give them any advice. I want to say don't leave without a prescription for ABA.
This is just the evaluation by a physician, I assume?
They're going to a developmental pediatrician today.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah, there's 2 things that are required when you initiate ABA. The procedure is what's required in order to even get your benefits in place from your payer, from your insurance company, is a clear diagnosis and some sort of prescription. A lot of the payers are kind of like they're less insistent on the prescription part, but the diagnosis is a definite. It needs to be very clear that your child has the diagnosis of autism, and that ABA is recommended by the developmental pediatrician or psychologist. And then when you see your BCBA, they will give you the actual hours that they think are appropriate for your child. That's crazy. It's taken so long.
And it's saying that they also have an ABA appointment too today, and the clinic with his clinician as well that's going to be doing therapy. So maybe they're past that. I don't know.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's terrific. And so if it's your first appointment with ABA, there are certain things that are really important there. So let's start with that for a second. There's a lot of, I don't want to call it politics, but there's a lot of stuff behind the hours that are recommended for the child. There's a lot of pressure from a lot of payers who don't want to pay for the hours that maybe a behavior analyst feels is appropriate. So there's that. Secondly, depending on the experience level of your behavior analyst, it's a very subjective recommendation. I could put two people in a room, one of them a behavior analyst who's been around for 30 years, and one of them a behavior analyst who's been around for 2 years, and they will make very different recommendations. So, and that's just unfortunate. We're trying very hard to standardize that, but there's a lot of pushback on the hours, and that is the dosage in ABA. So that's one thing that you want to be very comfortable with. And parents are usually shocked in the beginning when we say, okay, it's pretty intensive. Like you want to be doing, and it varies, it really varies a lot. But if you have a child who's under the age of 6, let's say, we really want to give them their maximum possibility of a positive outcome, which means the more hours, the better. And we might, in some cases, and in a lot of cases of 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, we're going to recommend 40 hours of ABA per week. So that means a lot of intervention. And the idea with that is that we're trying very hard to teach the child everything they need. It's called a comprehensive program, so that they can exit ABA and not necessarily need it and have a successful ongoing life after that. If your child's more in the range of 7 to 10 or something, they already probably have some other supports in their life, such as school and maybe other activities that are important to you, like speech or OT that they need. Then our time is restricted a little bit, and we might recommend 20 or 25 hours. And then if your child is older and they're doing really well, but they have 1 or 2 areas that you want to focus on, then we might recommend 15 hours. It really just has to do with what your goal is. So the most important thing on that day when you're starting your program is to feel good about it when you walk out, in terms of hours, how many hours, and in terms of content. So the content now, like if you go to CARD, we're going to give you a massive library of the things your child can't do that they should be doing for their age, because we do a very, very comprehensive assessment. But not everybody does that. So you need to be ready to say, these are the things I want, especially if your child's a little bit older. So you want to be able to say, my priority is whatever it is, I don't want my child hitting others. I don't want my child to have a tantrum in restaurants. I want my child to be potty trained. I want my child to be able to have friends. Whatever your priorities are, safety is a big one for parents. And they will then give you, or they should then give you, a path towards accomplishing that and tell you, okay, this is how we start and this is what we will go towards. So you want to feel really good about the hours. It fits into your life and it's as much as you possibly can do. You want to have a really good feeling about, obviously, the content of what is being done during those hours. And then you want to make sure that they have some procedures in place in terms of cancellations. For example, if the team, the behavior techs who are working with your child don't show up, how do they replace that person? What's their procedure? Do they consider the therapy important enough? Shannon, you know that I am very adamant about us trying to fulfill every hour that we recommend and we get from insurance.
Yes, ma'am.
And that involves like a lot of things that go on that card for VT, behavior text, not to cancel sessions. We're very, very strict about that. And our fulfillment rates are somewhere around 70%, somewhere between 69 70% across the board. I recently read a report that I was absolutely shocked. And it's from actually the company Central Reach, because they have a lot of data that they gather on all the companies that they serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot of different companies in their database. They didn't name the companies, obviously, but I was just shocked that the fulfillment rate in the general, other providers is in the 40 something percent, 47%. And I was just shocked. I was like, oh my God, like all these kids out there who need these hours and they're not getting these hours.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure that doesn't happen, because it's just a waste of your child's time.
Yeah.
And then I think you just need to make sure that you have a BCBA. It's all about the BCBA's commitments and how they fit with you. So they really need to just be invested in your child. And I would say that's the biggest thing I see with my senior clinicians at CARD is they're so invested in the positive outcomes for every child. They give their all in figuring out the child, helping the family reach their goals, like, taking care of the staff, answering everybody's questions, being available, doing a lot of caregiver collaboration, which is essentially parent training.
Yeah.
All of these things are vital to a successful program. You can speak more to that too, Shannon.
Well, I just want to say, and I see, Mike, that Lori's going to send me an email. I just want to say, make sure that whoever is doing that prescription knows that you're homeschooling and that you do have the hours, even though, he's at an age where they might be thinking he doesn't have the hours, that you do have the hours, because that will help support what I know you're doing. But I'll look forward to your email. But intensity, I always say I've become very unpopular, Dr. Grant-Pichet, because I keep using the phrase, who voted intensity off the island?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I know that ABA is a science and that people have licensure, that they're supposed to hold to the science. And yet we squabble about a whole bunch of other things, but I don't hear a whole lot of voices other than yours saying what happened to intensity. And we know that intensity works not just in ABA and all kinds of things, but we know for sure the science that the insurance funding it is based on is on intensity.
Yeah. I think, Shannon, it's all part of this sort of movement, which has to do with demand avoidance, and as individuals on the spectrum, we should not be expected to recover. It all kind of goes together, because the idea is that these intensive programs may actually be too harsh or too much for the child, and why do we need to do them? And from my perspective, it's really just a matter of making sure that the child is enjoying and learning and benefiting from this, and that you just keep moving forward. And that's why the intensity is very based on the child's needs and skills.
And as a matter of fact, on next week's show, our topic is going to be outcomes. Mm-hmm. So we'll have an opportunity to talk about what outcomes look like, because I think that's not being discussed either, people knowing what's possible. So we're going to talk about that next week. But Kylie has written in a question. She says, hello, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. Wanted to ask about nighttime toilet training for a 6 to 8 year old, for two 6 to 8 year olds who are still wetting on and off at night. We think it's behavioral as the GI issues are managed. Both kids are minimally vocal, so we can't ask why they wet at night. Are they scared to go to the bathroom at night, or not bothered and don't care about wetting the bed? They want us to know that this is them and a friend. They both have girls with ASD that are totally trained during the day, but nighttime is shaky and accidents are happening in the bed. So two very different children, but same thing.
So I think that it's just a matter of, first of all, bladder control. And bladder control goes back to this issue of awareness. And sometimes when our kids are asleep, they're just not as aware, right? So they become aware when it's a little too late. There's two things that you should do which might help this. One is, well, three things really. One is that you need to make sure the children don't drink anything past, let's say, 6 p.m. Again, I don't know when they're going to bed, but several hours before they go to sleep. So perhaps their last meal is, I don't know, 6 p.m. I'm not sure how old the kids are, but they shouldn't be getting liquid. So that's really important. That in itself will help significantly. The other thing is that obviously when they have a dry night, you want to reward that significantly and make sure that they know that. And the third thing is they still manufacture, which are kind of interesting things. They're like a mattress pad that rings a bell or a buzzer as soon as it gets wet. So, and that wakes the child up. And when it wakes the child up, then obviously you want to make sure there's access to the toilet and the child knows. You said they're already trained. So now you're waking the child up, and maybe the first couple of nights you want to guide the child to actually go to the bathroom. So, and these things are very, very, they're sensitive. So the child's not going to really appreciate having to get up and go to the bathroom. So this automatically teaches the child to not sweat. And their body, this is not classical conditioning, actually recognizes that, oh, if I release in bed, I'm going to have to wake up. And so then they become better at it. But again, it goes back to also make sure that they're not getting liquid late at night.
Yeah, let's set them up for success. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. My 8-year-old is potty trained, but he will only poop in our house. We went on vacation and he didn't poop for 10 days. Is this normal for autism?
It's normal for a lot of people, to be honest with you, not just autism. So yeah, it's just, again, you guys, these are simple things, but yeah, so this is very normal. And it has to do with just lack of comfort. Again, it's different toilets. They don't know what's going on here. What is this toilet? They don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. Try to figure out what you can take on trips that will make any other toilet feel familiar. Perhaps it's about, maybe you will put something on the wall of the toilet at home, and then when you travel, you take that with you. Something that will make your child feel like, oh, this is a familiar place, I can go. Make sure that they have the same level of privacy. A lot of kids don't like to go in public bathrooms. If they have the same level of privacy, let's say in a hotel room, for instance, and you are able to, put something up that reminds them of their own toilet, and you just reward it, then hopefully it'll gradually, but kids grow out of this as well. It's just an anxiety related thing.
But I hear this a lot, and it's one of the things on my list to tell whether an ABA provider is a good ABA provider is ask them the question, how do you plan for generalization from the beginning for any lesson? Because I see a lot of ABA providers don't, and what we end up with is kids who only know how to poop at home. But when you're, maybe take a minute, Dr. Grant-Pichet, and talk about how you prevent this from happening when you're toilet training a child.
Yeah, and generalization is such an important thing. And of course, you generalize across different people, different environments. And you don't even really classify a behavior as fully mastered until it's been generalized. So when a child learns something, they're learning it in one setting with typically one person. This is part of the reason that ABA providers have multiple people on your team, is that the more people that your child works with, it might take a little bit longer, but they will learn these behaviors and they'll learn to respond appropriately with different people. And the same is true of settings, right? So we talked today about a child who's perfectly potty trained at home and then starts having issues at school. And these are just steps where if they have mastered it at school, at home, you now need to make sure they master it at school. You now need to make sure they can do this in other people's homes, in hotels, or wherever you are. So it's a matter of not from the very beginning, but going through the steps, modeling it, and prompting a little bit more, modeling a little bit more, giving a little bit more support every time you go to a new setting, and then making sure your child has mastered that. And once you've done 3 or so settings, then the child will realize, oh, it's all the same. And they will be able to generalize to additional settings. But it is a part of ABA, and thank you for bringing that up, Shannon.
And, it always sounds so, I don't know, unexciting. But I have to say, as a parent who went through this, I remember when we were first doing toilet training, and they would ask me, they would say, okay, what's a place that your son loves to go to? We had our little timer because we were timing that, every so often we had to go to the bathroom, and he was being very successful. But the next thing I knew, we were off to the restaurant that had the climby thing that he loved so much. The timer went off and we had to go in the bathroom there. And like it was seamless. It was just seamless because you guys planned it, and it was so much fun for him. It wasn't this horrible dry thing where you're dragging him, so it was like.
No, and you have this timer.
Yeah.
And the timer is not just giving him like specific start and end times, but it's also a very familiar thing.
Yes.
And he's like, okay, there's the timer. I know what to do. It's attached to the timer. So this is really a very good idea as well, is just to have those little things that helped you when you were doing it at home.
And I never thought about that. Thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't think about that. But I just want to say there's so much fear around potty training. Parents feel like it's never going to happen. Are we ever going to get there? I mean, honestly, that was my first fear. The first time that after he got the diagnosis, I was at a car seat place buying a bigger car seat because I realized he was going to be in the car seat longer, and he was bigger. He was taller than average kids. And, the woman was installing it in the back seat, and she said, I'm just curious, why are you getting this bigger one? I said, he was just diagnosed with autism. And she said, oh, I have a friend, their son has autism, and he's doing so well. And I was like, tell me everything about him if he's doing well. And she goes, he's not potty trained. He's 15 and he's not potty trained. And I got to tell you, it took the wind out of my sails. I was like, oh my gosh, doing well means not potty trained at 15. And I know a lot of parents who feel like the potty training is this mountain that they're never going to get on top of. And yet you have great success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that it is, you really, like everything else in life, what you accomplish is very strongly correlated to what goals you set. So, the less we expect of our kids, the less they can accomplish.
Yeah.
So please set your expectations high, and ABA is a technique that will help get you there.
There we go. And Mike says, yes, I feel that way to this day. Eli does pretty well with potty training, but will he get the hang of the wiping himself? And if you decide to target it the way that Dr. Grandpichet told you to, I know you're going to be writing into me very soon and saying, we got that, and now we're on to the next thing. You will get there, you guys.
I hope so.
Absolutely. All right. I know you got a meeting. We're about out of time. I'm going to let you go, Dr. Grandpichet. Do we want to run the promo for the week? No, we don't want to do that. But tomorrow, I just want to say, tomorrow is World Autism Awareness Day. We have a very special show planned with the fabulous Kobe Bird. Dr. Grandpichet, have you been watching The Pit?
No, I have not.
Oh, well, Kobe is on The Pit. You got to watch The Pit.
I will.
Oh,
sure.
It's the best show. I know your whole family. I found myself the other day, I was like, is your youngest daughter, I was like, is she watching this? She would love this show. But really, all of your kids would love it. Great writing. All of your kids would love it. And Kobe is on The Pit. He's going to talk about that with us tomorrow. We're going to talk about World Autism Awareness Day. That's tomorrow's show. And make sure that you're watching the schedule for everything that's happening. We've got some big shows happening over this next month. But Dr. Grant-Pichet, thank you so much. Happy,
Thank
good
you.
week.
Happy April, and thanks so much, Shannon. Good to see you and everyone.
All right, you take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
And we will be back tomorrow, you guys. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And we hope to see you there.